everyone and welcome to today's video. I'm finally back with a book review after about a month of not posting anything. So I hope that you're all doing well. And I do want to say just thank you for 500 subscribers joining me on my channel. It really does mean a lot. So welcome everybody, welcome along to this little witchy journey. But enough of that for now. I want to get straight on with today's review. So I will be reviewing this book, which is Herbal Magick. It says it's a handbook of natural spells, charms and potions, and it's by Aurora Kane. So as you can see, this was an e-version that I read. I was given a copy of this book through NetGalley from the publishers, which is Wellfleet Press and Quarto Publishing Group, and that's in exchange for the review. Like I said, I haven't uploaded a video in about a month, so I am running a little bit behind with all of my book reviews. I do usually like to get them out before the book comes out, but I've had a really sort of rubbish last couple of weeks, so that just wasn't going to happen really. But the good news is that the book came out on the 29th of June, so last week. I guess I'm not too far behind, but the good news is that that means that the book is out now. Let's start with a little bit about the author then. So Aurora Kane is a practicing witch from America, and she's the founding member of a coven which is called the Coven of the Moonbeam Ravine, which is a very beautiful and magical name for a coven. But that was all I could really find out about her. I don't think she has any sort of social media or anything. She has written some other books which are part of this series of books done by the publisher. So there is also Moon Magick and House Magick, which she has written, and I did have a look on Goodreads as well, and it tells me that she is also writing another book in this series called Goddess Magick, which will be coming out next year. And if it's anything like this one, I think I'm probably going to love it, and that's probably one that I'm going to check out as well. The book itself then is described as a directory featuring magical herbs along with 36 spells that are related to attraction, enchantment, trust, friendship, fortune and success. There are also sort of specific guidance on how to create spell jars, make herbal poppets and brew herbal teas. It's basically just an introduction on how to use herbs in your practice, looking at the magical properties of the different herbs, how to use them, how to source them, or if you prefer, it does also talk you through how to harvest and to dry your own herbs that you can then blend and use in your spells to harness the properties of the herbs. As I mentioned, the book is part of a series or a collection of books that the publisher has put together. There's those two by Aurora Kane as well, which is Moon Magick and House Magick, but there is also Love Spells, Not Magic and Superstitions in the collection. But for me, this is the title that stood out the most, just because Herbal Magick and Green Witchcraft are just part of my own personal practice really. So at first I was a little bit dubious about this book because I found that when publishers do these books like this in these collections or in these series, that they tend not to be very good. So they might choose like a few topics like crystals and herbs and astrology, etc. Release a book on each topic, but ultimately they make one collection, which is fine, but I do think that they tend to be quite rushed, like the publishers are just trying to churn out these books. And I found that actually as well, sometimes the people that write the books are not actually knowledgeable about the topic that they're writing about. So for example, they might not be a practicing witch or astrologer, they might not be a green witch, someone who doesn't even work with herbs. They might be ghostwriters or people who write about lots of different topics. It doesn't mean that they're not well researched by any means, but for me it just takes away from that personal connection that the author would have with their topic, if that makes sense. So firstly, I will say that that is definitely not the case with this book. As I mentioned, Aurora Kane is a practicing witch and she is very knowledgeable on this topic. It's really beautifully designed, and I imagine that a physical copy of the book would just be super beautiful. The images throughout are really stunning and they look like they've been done in watercolour. They're just really soft and they're very gentle, and they just look beautiful sort of scattered amongst the pages throughout the book. It's also very poetic with the way that the book is written. The introduction itself is actually a poem and it just makes it seem super magical. She just has a very sort of lovely lyrical way of writing. So she starts by covering the basics with things like what is a herb. You might think, well, that's pretty obvious, but in witchcraft and magic, the term herb does actually cover a lot of things. So like Aurora says in the book, it's not just sort of the seasoning that you put on your food. Herbs can be anything from plants, flowers, and the trees as well. So if you are a beginner looking to start your work with herbal magic, then it is a really good book for that. Like I said, it's got all the basics in there, and she discusses as well what makes herbs magical. So it's important to know how and why things work before you start working with them. For me as well, she also really captures why a lot of people, not just witches, are looking at using herbs in their daily lives. So she talks about balancing the stress and unease of modern day living with natural, simple, mindful practices. And for me, that's exactly what green witchery is all about. So just taking that time away from sort of the fast-paced, sometimes chaotic world of modern life and falling back on this ancient wisdom just to help you navigate your life in a more natural way. I think it's worth noting at this point that the author does take the stance of do no harm when using herbs in your magic and in your craft. So for me, I do also follow the Wiccan and witchcraft law, but I know that there are witches out there that don't follow the Wiccan Rede or the threefold law. It doesn't mean you won't enjoy the book, just so you know that it reflects the author's personal values. Saying that, she does also discuss being respectful in terms of using herbs, which is something that everyone needs to be aware of. So when using things from nature in their craft, so making sure that your practice is sustainable, especially when it comes to harvesting and using herbs. One of my favourite things about the book then, and something I did mention a little bit earlier, are the illustrations of the herbs and the flowers and their correspondences. They're just so beautiful. It's sort of how I want my book of shadows to look, with the herb correspondences, but I have zero artistic talent. I'll just see if I can find the quick image. I don't think I can put it on the screen, but I might be able to. So for example, this is only a little one, but she's got sort of the beautiful paintings or drawings of the herbs, and then the little bit underneath as to the correspondences, and I think that's just really beautiful. I also totally learned some new things from this book, which is always really exciting. So as well as correspondences for the herbs, so what their magical properties are, Aurora also explains other things that enhance or, as she says, amplifies the power of the herbs. So things such as herbs correspondences in terms of the elements, whether they have masculine or feminine energies, the planets that they can link to, zodiac signs that they link to, and in another chapter she does also a similar thing with colours, with candles, with crystals and moon phases. So she's linking the use of herbs in your craft with so many other different things as well, and it's really sort of made me consider when I use the herbs and what other things I'm using the herbs with, if that makes sense. So I was already aware that these correspondences sort of existed, but it's just made me really excited to consider them a little bit more in my craft, and to take advantage of them, I suppose, in my magical workings, to hopefully amplify my spells and just to make them a little bit more powerful. For example, it's about connecting to a particular element when you're working with a herb that's attuned to, or a crystal that has sort of similar energies and things, just to help enhance your spells, I suppose. When reading the book at this point, I was all ready to say that I was a little bit disappointed that there were no specific examples of herbs to use with the different elements, or herbs to use with the different planets, different crystals, different colours, etc. And I mean, it's probably something that you could easily find out, but it would be good to have some sort of specific examples to start with. But then, oh my days, I just needed to be patient. Later in the book, my disappointment was addressed in the best possible way, because there was a whole chapter just dedicated to this. It's called The Directory of Herbs, Plants and Flowers. For this 73 different herbs, the author has included the common and the Latin name, the planetary companion, daily correspondences, the zodiac sign that it links to, element that that herb connects to, its energy, so whether it's masculine or feminine energy, magical properties of the herbs, suggested use of that herb, and even a little small sort of sample spell to get you started. I will show you an example of exactly what I mean, because I thought that this was probably one of the really great things about the book. Hi. I'll just see if I can find an example to show you of exactly what I mean. It's quite a way into the book. Hello. Hello. So here we have, for example, I think I'll try and find a picture that I can put on the screen to make it a little bit clearer, but you've got the beautiful illustration of the herb, and then in the corner there's a little sort of like quick guide which has got the planetary companion, the zodiac sign, the energy, the daily correspondence, the element, and then underneath it's got all the other things that I mentioned. So there's that in there which has been done for 73 different herbs, so a lot of work has gone into that. What are you doing, Bobo? Hey baby. Say hello. Say hello. So like I said, that's a lot of information in that section, and the book for me is worth it just for that section alone. I think for a lot of witches who are interested in green witchcraft, or just using herbs in their craft, then this is sort of the dream of what we imagine our grimoire would look like. Just to have all of those correspondences of the herbs, the key information, the little illustration. I know that for myself I have started sort of collating that information, just for a few herbs at the moment. I've not really done so many, and it is nowhere near as beautiful or as amazing as the way that it's done in this book. I feel like it would be really great if you had the option to maybe print them out or to get them on separate cards, so that you could just put them in your grimoire. I think that would be a really nice idea. Something else that stood out to me while reading was a little section about setting intentions. So for beginners, Aurora explains the basics of spell work and how to set intentions. But it's just really good to have that little refresher, because I do feel like my intentions have been all over the place at the moment, and it's probably why my spells are not very effective at the moment. I don't want to give everything away that she talks about, but it just emphasised to me how important the small details are. Just things like being clear, being consistent, being patient, and just ultimately having that belief. So it does have some really great advice for beginners, and also some sort of subtle reminders for us more seasoned witches, which we do all need every now and again. So I have talked about a lot of things that I loved about this book, but actually my favourite chapter was Herbal Magic Lore, where she talks about goddesses, trees and fairies. So obviously I loved the goddess section. She looks at a range of goddesses from different pantheons: Roman, Greek, Egyptian, Celtic, Norse, Indigenous, Native American, Chinese, as well as having a little bit of information about each of the goddesses. My favourite thing was the herbs and the flowers that link to those specific goddesses. This is really nice to know, especially if, like me, you are quite new to working with goddesses. It's just a really easy and nice way of inviting them into your practice. The last section of the book then features a lot of different spells and rituals that you can try and adapt for your own sort of purposes. I won't say too much about them just because there are quite a few. There is a really good range. One I think that I will personally try is one for extinguishing bad habits, because there's definitely a bad habit that I have at the moment that I really need to sort out. Okay, final thoughts then. So I did have a negative about the book. I did mention it a little bit earlier, that there were no example herbs included with the various correspondences, but then that just totally went out of the window when there was just a whole chapter dedicated to 73 different herbs and their correspondences. So I don't really feel like I have any negatives, and I know that sounds bad, that I just sort of feel like I should have a negative, but I don't in this case, so there we are. I just really liked it. So one quick note I will say is that the author does mention smudging when she means smoke cleansing, and this is something that I've done myself in a previous video, but I am now familiar with the idea that smudging is a very specific practice, and it does have a lot of ritual surrounding it. So in most cases, when we are cleansing things with the herbs and burning them, it is smoke cleansing. I just thought it was worth pointing this out so that people are aware before they go into the book. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I really love the author's writing style, and I do definitely want to check out some other books that she's written, particularly the one coming out next year about goddesses. She just explains things in a really lovely way, and I get along with her writing style. Okay, that's it for the review today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it useful. If you do want the book, then I will put a link below. Let me know if you check it out and what you think about it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video, hopefully in less than a month.